Hello and welcome to the Brutal Iron Gym podcast, where our goal is to cut through the BS and deliver the brutal truth about topics related to health and happiness. So today's topic is in regards to training, and we're going to be discussing tips for maximizing recovery. So this was asked for by listeners, so thank you very much for the suggestion. And anybody else, if you ever have suggestions for topics, we love to hear from you guys. So that way we can kind of know a little more about what you guys want to know about. And I jokingly say that at least I know one person will now be listening. But it does help. The more ideas, the more feedback we hear from you, the more we can kind of fine-tune this and make this exactly what you want. So the idea of the podcast isn't to, I guess like what it actually is, is if you want to know something about training, nutrition, or the mindset needed for like healthy lifestyle, we want to be able to provide the answer to you, again, with no BS, just straight truth. This is the answer. So if there's anything that you think is holding you back from being successful, please let us know, and we'll give you the answer, or we'll go find somebody who knows the answer and get it from them. But that's what this podcast is supposed to be for, is anything that you want to know about, that you want to know the honest truth, you let us know, okay? So thank you to this person who reached out, and kind of their kind of ending statement to their question was, I know that to get bigger, stronger, faster, and better, you have to improve not only your training and your nutrition, but also your recovery. And that's absolutely true. So that's why we're going to go through some tips for maximizing recovery. And the person who chimed in for this, sent us the question, they actually have kind of categories for each of the areas that they wanted kind of addressed or that they thought might be important. So we'll go through and talk about them, and if they are important, we'll tell you kind of like what to do about it and how to use it best. If they aren't important, then we'll tell you that too. So I don't know if they intended to put these in like a specific order, but I'm going to go through and kind of do the order that they have. So, post-workout nutrition. So how can I improve my recovery through post-workout nutrition? The idea of the post-workout nutrition, so what you eat after you work out, is that you replace what you used. So if I did a workout where I used, say, 400 calories, and a lot of the work I did created muscular damage, then I want to replace the 400 calories and make sure I have a decent amount of protein in there. So again, we have podcasts. We've talked about this a bunch in the past. We have podcasts for how much protein you need a day. So just kind of search on the podcast page for protein. I forget the exact number that podcast is. But the idea is if we did something that created muscular damage, we want to make sure we consume protein so our body can repair that damage. So that's what protein does. It fixes and repairs our muscles. And we also want to replace the carbs and or fat that we used. Now, there is science that lets us know if you did, a certain activity, how much of that would have been percentage of carb usage versus how much of that being fat usage. So there is nitty-gritty details, and I do that for like my performance-based clients or like people who are aesthetic-based that we absolutely need them to look perfect. We will replace kind of more along the lines of what they exactly used. But in general, for most people, is if I was active, I need to replace with enough calories to make up what I was active in. So we see this all the time. I actually just helped another trainer. They had a client who does like some MMA jiu-jitsu style stuff. And they were looking over programming and nutrition specifics for that client. And what was happening with that client was they were doing 2-a-day workouts. After their first workout, they were having a protein shake with some carbs, but it was only like 200 calories in that shake. And doing MMA and stuff, they would have burned way more than 200 calories. Then they were waiting like 2 hours and having like a protein bar. Then they were waiting another 2 hours, and then they were finally having a bigger meal that would have had, all the kind of calories that they would have needed way closer to that workout. So the person was working out and then under eating based on what their recovery was needed for 4 hours. So they spent 4 hours after the workout leaving their body in a stressed state. That's going to impair that recovery, especially because they're training twice a day. So they really put a severe limit on how much their body can recover from the first bout to the second bout. So the idea of post-workout nutrition is to get the food in you as quick as you can, because that's when your body needs it. If you just got done beating the crap out of it, it needs it now. So if I broke my leg today, I would like to get my leg treated today. So I don't want to break my leg today and then go to the hospital like 2 months from now. Doesn't work. So the idea is if we went and did workout and we caused trauma to the body, which is what most workouts do, in a good way. So we want to repair the body and take care of it right afterwards. So post-workout nutrition, the best way to maximize that is to consume about as many calories as what you use in your workout. And this is like through trial and error, by the way. How are you going to know? There are calculations you can look up online. And you can type in the calculator kind of function what activity you did, for how long did you do it, and it will give you a general estimated amount. You can also use, like, people have smartwatches now, where it'll kind of like estimate the calories you burn based on your steps and activity level and heart rate and all that stuff. You can do that. The more simple way of doing it is just like weigh yourself every day, or so I'll give you a couple ideas. Number one is weigh yourself every day, and start eating whatever you feel like feels appropriate after your workouts. If after a couple days or after a couple weeks you're gaining weight, you're probably overeating. If after a couple days or after a couple weeks you're losing weight, then you're probably undereating. Also, you can base it on performance. So if your performance measures in that training aren't improving, you're probably undereating. If they are improving, then you're probably doing the right amount. So it kind of depends on what you want to measure in terms of how to know how much you should consume. So there are specifics for that, but way longer than one podcast. So in general, you want to consume about as many calories as what you burned. The more muscular damage your activity caused, the more protein you want in those calories. Cool. The next category we have is active recovery. So what this means is, let's say, for example, you came into the gym and you hashtag beast mode on leg day. So the next couple of days, your legs are going to be repairing and healing themselves. Within the healing and repair process, if you had sufficient amount of muscle damage, you're going to be sore. So one of the ways to combat soreness is to stay active and stay moving. So if a day after I worked out, I went for a walk, or I went to go swim in a swimming pool, that'll help me feel less soreness because I'll be able to keep my muscles moving. And there's a whole bunch of sciencey stuff as to what soreness actually is. And again, I'm trying to keep this more general. But active recovery is an excellent, excellent way to improve recovery. One of the benefits is it reduces soreness. So that way you just feel better, and you won't carry as much soreness and limited range of motion into your next workout. Also, active recovery tends to increase blood flow to those areas. So if I beat the crap out of my legs, the next day I go for a walk, it's going to improve blood flow to my legs during that walk. Therefore, I'm going to get better nutrients carried into the area. I'm going to get better attentive nature of the body to address still what might be messed up in those legs. So it can speed up recovery through the increased blood flow, and it can actually just make you feel better because you won't feel as sore and as movement restricted. So that is a good thing, and that actually is helpful. So both of the two things we talked about here, obviously nutrition is extremely helpful, so that's a definite do. Active recovery is helpful, so that's definitely something to keep in mind. Sometimes people say, well, I don't have the time. Yeah, you do. You're just not taking it. So you have 5 or 10 minutes to go for a walk every day. We just choose not to. Okay? So, and this is coming from a guy who has done this, like I've told you guys in past podcasts, I've worked out every single day for a year, and I've done that multiple times, multiple years over my life. I've worked out where I just put on a pair of old shoes and a raincoat and just went for a walk in the rain. So just because it's raining doesn't mean diddly. I grew up in Pennsylvania where it's freaking cold half the year, and I went for walks out in the snow. I went for runs out in the snow. I used to work out outside in the snow sometimes just to challenge myself. So your excuse is what you're willing to accept. So what are you willing to accept as holding you back from being your best? Hopefully, we would all love to answer nothing. We'd all love to say, nothing's going to hold me back. But if you say, oh, it's raining outside, I can't go for a walk, that's a pretty weak-ass excuse for why you're not going to move forward that day. Okay? Now, next thing we have is improving sleep quality. Absolutely important, and definitely going to make a big difference. So the concept of nutrition helping our recovery versus sleep helping our recovery was discussed in yesterday's podcast. Now, what's very funny for anybody listening to this, well, hope all of you guys, is I'm actually making this podcast before I make the one that's going to be published as of yesterday by the time you hear this one. So hopefully nothing happens after I record this one that prevents me from recording the other one. So technically, I'm talking about the future and the past here, is the podcast before this one should discuss nutrition versus sleep as the roles of recovery and which one is most important for which activity you partake in. Okay, and what are the differences between trying to recover through food and the differences of trying to recover through sleep. Okay, so listen to that podcast, it's pretty cool. Now, improve sleep quality. Tons and tons and tons and tons of stuff. So we have a sleeping podcast in the past that we've done where we talked about improving sleep quality and methods that you can use. So some of them are just controlling the room temperature, making sure the room's not too hot, so you're not just sweating, and you can actually fall asleep well. Also is limiting fluid intake, so you don't have to get up in the middle of the night and pee 47 times. Also reducing or modifying carb intake. Sometimes if you have too much sugar before you go to bed, that can actually stimulate your brain. Our brain runs on glucose, so if you have like an influx of glucose, your body can sometimes like have your brain just kind of like become wide awake because all of a sudden it has a bunch of fuel coming in out of nowhere. Also limiting technological devices. So you will fall asleep faster if you read a book or you close your eyes and meditate or go through a thinking process. So I have a set of 10 questions that I call daily happiness that I go through and ask myself at the end of the day. And I'll often close my eyes and I'll think through the questions. And that, like, sometimes I drift off to sleep before I finish. But that's a cool way to just kind of calm your body by closing your eyes, calming everything, reducing noise, reducing visual light coming at you. So it's a big difference. So improving sleep quality along with nutrition are probably the two best things that you can do to improve recovery, other than just making sure your training is appropriate volume and intensity. So those are kind of the big three. Am I training appropriately? Am I not overtraining? So to where I'm beating the crap out of myself and causing a lot of issues with that. So cortisol response issues, which can cause sleep issues, which can then cause recovery issues. So is my training the appropriate volume and the appropriate intensity? Then am I sleeping enough? Am I eating right? So those are the big three. So things like active recovery, for example, it is helpful, but it's not as important as the other big three, okay? So it is helpful, but it's not as important. So make sure you get the big three first, right first. So again, training intensity and volume should be correct, nutrition correct, and sleep correct, okay? Now, the next thing we have is relaxation techniques. So that's actually one of the things, like meditation is a good one. Another one is like sometimes people do hot baths, or they'll sit in a sauna. Some people get massages. There's a ton of things out there. There are breathing methods you can go through that cause relaxation. So you can just type like in Google relaxation breathing, and they'll go through how to do breathing patterns. So there's actually like certain pacings of exhaling and inhaling, and waves of pacings that'll actually help your body relax. There's also mindful relaxation techniques going through muscles. So where you actually try to like lay down on your back, get into a comfortable laying position. You can then think of the muscles of your toes. You can actually kind of like flex your toes, relax your toes, flex your toes, relax your toes, and then leave them relaxed. You can then think of your calves, for example. You can flex your calf, release your calf, flex your calf, then release your calf, and leave it relaxed. So you can see in my voice, I'm kind of like talking you through it. But there are muscle relaxation patterns and techniques that you can use for that. So relaxation techniques is regard to physical relaxation, which is muscles, or mental relaxation, which is stress control. So those are all very, very, very helpful. And reducing stress, reducing muscular tightness actually really improves your recovery between workouts. And also it allows it to not interfere with your physical recovery and adaptations to your training. So if you can keep your muscles more relaxed and at ease, they will have a better chance to kind of heal maximally and grow maximally. So a lot of bodybuilders who are wanting to maximize muscle size, they'll get massages. And part of it is to kind of ensure that their muscles are opened up and moving correctly. So their capacity, their size and room for growth is maximal. And then also that their efficiency of movement is maximal. But then also to reduce any tightnesses or any kind of knots or any kind of junked up tissue. So if a tissue is junked up and not moving well, then it's not going to grow well. So relaxation techniques definitely help. So the next thing we have is supplements. There are supplements that can help. There's glucose and not glucose, glutamine. Sorry. There's a bunch of like kind of muscle recovery ones that can help. So I took them in the past, and I can't say I really noticed a lot. But that could have just been, anecdotal. That's not really helpful. So if you are struggling to recover between your workouts, or you're wanting to maximize your recovery, looking at like glutamine supplements does help. In the sense of it might give you a 1% increase, but hey, that's 1% that you wouldn't have had otherwise. And some of the times the supplements are relatively cheap, so it's kind of worth giving it a try and seeing how you feel. There are also like cortisol blockers, which help with kind of reducing stress. And like I've had some people before. I had a client who had a managerial job at a very large location, and they spent all day pissed off and mad at everybody. So other than taking anger management classes, they could take cortisol blockers, and sometimes they reported that it just kind of helped them feel a little more at ease. So that's actually the next thing the person has listed is controlling cortisol. And there are supplements for that. And not to go too fast away from supplements, but post-workout recovery supplements are great. Okay, worth giving a try. Other type of supplements that can sometimes they reportedly help recovery is like drinking BCAAs while you work out. Sometimes people will say that that'll attenuate muscular damage in the sense of like it'll help kind of reduce the amount of muscle being damaged while you work out and give your body a chance to fix it while it's being like torn down. BCAAs kind of sort of are okay, but you're better off putting like actual like whey protein and having like solid food meals around your training. So better timing it so there's protein in your blood through those sources. So BCAAs sometimes it's hard to get enough BCAAs to actually be meaningful while not costing you like $1 bajillion. So also recovery supplements, something that will improve your recovery, for example, is joint supplements. So if you don't take a joint supplement, but your elbow always bothers you, and that kind of like, I'd want to bench today, but my elbow kind of feels funny, I'm going to wait till tomorrow. And then all of a sudden tomorrow it doesn't feel any better, but you're going to bench anyhow. And then, man, the elbow really hurts the next workout. Well, taking a joint supplement can help with recovery because it can help reduce the amount of annoyance that you get within a single workout, therefore reducing the need for it to recover by the next workout. So if it's less annoyed per workout, it can recover faster between workouts. So joint supplements might be nice as well. So that's the idea of like supplements there are some benefit. Like there's those post-workout supplements. Like we just said, supplements for making sure you have enough protein in your bloodstream, which you should do just with food. Joint supplements. So there are some room for supplements to be helpful. I would say that they're kind of more on the, I wouldn't say that they're the highest priority. So they're kind of middle of the pack in terms of recovery techniques. I think you're better off looking at your post-workout nutrition, sleeping quality, even relaxation techniques. So staying physically and mentally relaxed will help a lot. So the next thing they have after supplements was that controlling cortisol. And the best way to control cortisol is to not live stressed. So if you can try to find a calmer state of mind throughout the day, better ways to manage anger, better ways to manage stress. So if you're feeling overwhelmed, so we've actually been in a series of our mindset podcast, we've been doing a series of overcoming stress. And we've been talking about worry and hurry and people pleasing and social media. So if there's ways to reduce stress in that way, that'll actually help improve your recovery between workouts. It can even improve your excitement for your next workout. So it just kind of overall makes you feel better, post-workout, right now, in the future, it just kind of makes you feel better overall. So controlling cortisol through mindset and just being in a healthier mental state throughout the day is a big benefit. The other way of controlling cortisol is sometimes people overstimulate themselves with caffeine. So they'll take coffee in the morning, like a energy drink in the mid-afternoon, then they'll take like pre-workout before their workout at night, and then they have trouble sleeping, or they always feel like they're wired and bouncing off the wall. Well, if you run all day off caffeine, and especially if you're not paying attention to your nutrition and you're not eating enough, you're going to run a very high cortisol level throughout the day. That's going to impair your recovery, and that's going to potentially lead to injury. So it's going to impair recovery so bad that over time you'll have muscle damage and strains and stress that doesn't repair well. Same thing with joints. And all of a sudden one day you come into the gym you're all hopped up on caffeine, so you can't notice how badly your body feels underneath, and all of a sudden you tear a muscle. So controlling cortisol by controlling caffeine intake is extremely helpful, and also important to make sure you don't overstress your body. So the next thing we have is ice baths. I have done ice baths, and I actually really like them. So they help reduce pulling strains and stress in your joints. So I've done ice baths for lower body only, and I've done ice baths where my shoulders and elbows have been included, and my hands. So I actually have some arthritic type pains in my hands every now and then. So ice baths, in my opinion, have helped a lot. So I really like them. They're not always practical. So getting all the ice you need to fill up your bathtub is very difficult. And then the last couple of places I've lived, I haven't had bathtubs that I actually fit into. So, damn. But ice baths do help. So they're fun to have, and they're helpful from time to time. You'll even see people just wrap bags of ice on their shoulders, for example, or their elbows. So you see that, like there's a guy named James Strickland who's a really big bench presser, like bench presses high 600s. He puts ice on his shoulders after every bench workout. That's actually fine. That's a really good thing to do. Thor Bjornsson, the world's strongest man, him and Larry Wheels have been making some videos together, and Thor talks about doing kind of ice baths and getting in really cold water after his training sessions. Brian Shaw, world's strongest man, has done that before as well. So obviously we know of it a lot through sports. So like pitchers in baseball will go through like putting ice on their shoulders. A lot of people in athletic sports will go into like bath tubs, so like cold tubs, for example. So that has been proven to work absolutely. It's just not always the most convenient thing to do, but it definitely works. Okay. So stretching, that is a fantastic thing, because the more evened out and loose you are going into your workout, the less pulling and straining stress you put on your joints. So pre-workout stretching routine is fantastic, and I have absolutely found out that to be true from my life and for a lot of my clients. So we have a lot of preparatory movements that I have my clients go through to make sure that they're moving well. So I tell them all the time that like your joint is like a puppet, and the muscles that connect to the joint are like the strings of the puppet. If one of the muscles is tight and bound up, that joint isn't going to move well. Just like if I took one of the strings of a puppet and kind of tied it in a bunch of knots, that puppet's going to move very odd due to that short string. So that puts stress on all the other areas of that joint and the other muscles connected to that joint. So stretching is extremely helpful, and stretching is more so preventative. So stretching before you cause any stress is more helpful than trying to stretch afterwards. So stretching afterwards does minimal benefit compared to stretching beforehand. So whereas the other stuff we've been talking about, like ice baths, doing it beforehand is not really that helpful. Doing it afterwards is more helpful. So active recovery, for example, is afterwards. So going for a walk or going for a swim is an after the damage is done thing. So stretching is better done as a before the damage is done thing. Then the last thing we got here is light feeder workouts to push blood through the damaged muscle tissue. So yeah, so high blood flow workouts are fantastic, and that's just a form of active recovery, to be honest. So I've done workouts before where I'll come into the gym and I'll do 500 reps of leg extensions, 500 reps of leg curls, 500 reps of leg press, 500 reps of hack squat, 500 reps of adductors, 500 reps of abductors, and I'll do that as a full workout. And that has helped a lot when I've been repairing through some leg tears and leg injuries. I've done upper body stuff where I'll do 500 pushes, like chest press motions, 500 row motions, 500 tricep extensions, 500 bicep curls. So I've kind of gone through and done big workouts like that. They help a lot. So at our gym here, we have a connector for our Concept 2 rower that allows you to attach any handle you want. So we'll often attach different handles, like D-ring handles, and just kind of do seated rows on our rower, which is awesome because you have the resistance against the contraction, but there's no resistance to your eccentric. And the eccentric is what you get a lot of inflammation and a lot of muscle damage. So if you can avoid the eccentric but still get the concentric, you get good blood flow, but you get very minimal inflammation. So we'll often like do circuits and different exercises using that rower with the various handles that we have. So that's actually a fantastic way of like active recovery. So active recovery can be non-direct in the sense of like walks or going for a swim, or it can be more direct where you target the exact muscle or joint that you want to recover and do a lot of repetitions with minimal eccentric damage on the joint or muscles. So that way it's high blood flow but low inflammation. So that helps a lot too. It just depends on whether you have the time to get those in. So those are a little more time intensive. So sometimes they're hard to kind of fit into a full schedule. Okay, so that was what I would consider a pretty fast version, but it's still 25 minutes deep. So that's the idea of maximizing recovery. So all of those things do help. Actually, nothing that person listed would be considered not working. Okay, so those are all great things, and I think that's plenty enough to keep you guys busy. So again, I think your first thing is if my training is causing me pains. So if after every time I bench press my elbow hurts or my shoulders hurt, you need to look at how you're bench pressing. Like, what's your technique, what's your intensity, and what's your volume. So your training should cause general fatigue to the body and general muscle soreness. It shouldn't cause specific location pain. If it does, you have to look at technique and volume and intensity. Okay, make sure your training is correct. The next thing you want to look at is nutrition. Make sure you're eating enough, not overeating so that way you don't gain unnecessary body fat, but make sure you're eating enough protein. So around the 1 gram per pound a day is pound of body weight a day is plenty. And then make sure your overall calories are replacing the amount that you're using. So just kind of make sure your nutrition matches what your activity is. And that'll make a big difference. And then sleep. So those are the big three: training, nutrition, and sleep. So do all you can. So like listen to the past podcasts we have about sleep. So you can do a search on that. And it's a full 20-some minute podcast on sleep. And put all those, techniques and tactics to use. So do that stuff, those big three first. They're the most important. Then you can look at things like active recovery, relaxation techniques, supplements, ice baths, stretching, stuff like that. Okay? So those are all beneficial, but they're not going to be as good as controlling your training, nutrition, and sleep. Now, what happens if you can't sleep anymore? You're like, man, 6 hours is the most I can do. Well, then maximize the hell out of those other components, and hopefully you'll get away with it. Okay? So that's the idea, is you have a lot of tools in your tool belt there. So we went through 2, 4, 6, 8, so 9. We went through 9 ways that you improve your recovery. So if you can't do very well at one of them, just try to maximize the hell out of the other ones, okay? And see if it helps. So again, the reason why maximizing recovery is important is you can only get stronger from what you can recover from, okay? So in order to get bigger, stronger, faster, and better, you have to be able to recover from the stimulus that you create in your training. So our training produces the stimulus for change. Our recovery is how we meet that stimulus. Can we recover to create as much change as what our workouts would have elicited? Okay? So that's the goal. If you have any specific questions about anything recovery related, and you want to learn more about any one of these particular areas, let us know and we'll do a deeper dive on that. And we'll try to give you all the information you need just on that specific one. So thank you to the listener who chimed in with this one. It's a great topic, and I think it's a lot of food for thought for people. So, cool. Thank you very much. So if you like this information, you can find more from us on Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter, Brutal Iron Gym. Also, if you like the podcast, please share it with family and friends. So the more people we help, the happier the world will be. And if you have any questions, feedback, or suggestions, we'd love to hear from you. The podcast is for you, so I know what you want to learn about. You can reach us at our email at brutalirongym@gmail.com. As always, I hope this was helpful, and thank you for listening.